Hi guys, this is Marsha Walker and I'm going to be talking to you today about how to reduce conditionals. There are several different possibilities, and so I'm going to start with ones that are a little bit more familiar to things that we have learned, and then we're going to add to it some newer ideas as well. So we're going to start with the reduction that you are already familiar with. So imagine we had this sentence: if he lives here, he will be happy. Now remember, this if clause is an example of an adverb clause. So let's think back, how can we reduce adverb clauses? First, the subjects must be the same. So he and he. Yep, the subjects are the same. So next, we are going to delete the subject of the dependent clause here. And then we are going to change the verb to a gerund. So it would become living. So our newly reduced sentence is, if living here, comma, he will be happy. Okay? So one way that we can reduce conditionals is by reducing the adverb clause, following the same rules that we have already learned. Okay, so now what I want to do is add the next possible way that we can reduce a conditional. Okay, we can reduce it when in context it is clear what the condition already is. We don't want to repeat that condition over and over again. So let me give you an example. Okay, so let's imagine this situation. If she is late, she will be in trouble. If she gets in trouble, she will cry. And if she cries, she will be embarrassed. Okay? Now let's imagine if we wanted to connect these ideas, there's no real reason to repeat over and over again. So since here it mentions the idea trouble, why repeat it here? And because here it mentions the idea cry, why repeat it here? Well, we don't have to. What we can do is use a phrase instead to replace the same idea, as to connect them and to not repeat when it's not necessary. So let's say, for example, we can say, if so, she will cry. And if so, she will be embarrassed. So the meaning here, if so, equals if, yes, this happens. Okay, so imagine the situation is if so. So if she is late, she will be in trouble. If so, if she gets in trouble, if yes, she is in trouble, she will cry. And if she cries, if so, if she cries, she will be embarrassed. Okay, so what we're offering here is a connection between where it's not necessary to repeat the connected ideas. Okay? Now, in thinking about if so, we can also use if not. And this would actually be like the contrast. Okay? So let's look at an example of when we would use if so and if not. Okay? So let's imagine this situation. Jenny is going to sing tomorrow. So we could say if she sings well, she will be famous. Okay? If she doesn't sing well, she will not be famous. Okay? So because this idea connects to the previous one, but it is about a negative situation, we can say instead of if she doesn't sing well, we can say if not. Meaning, if she does not sing well, same as if not. So we could say if not, she will not be famous. Okay? Additionally, we can also use the transition word otherwise. So otherwise has the same meaning here as if not. Okay, so let's talk about another example here. So if I have this situation, so maybe I'm going to get a good job, and I'm looking at maybe yes and maybe no. If I'm doing that, usually I would use if so or if not. So in this case, if I said, maybe I'm going to get a job, if so, that means if I get a good job, right? Then I might say, I will be happy. And if not, I will be sad. Okay? Usually we like to use if so and if not together, meaning maybe yes, maybe no, to show the two different possibilities. Okay? But additionally, I can use otherwise. Usually otherwise is used when there's only the negative situation. Okay? So in this case, I could say otherwise I will be sad. So what happened here is I'm going to get a good job, otherwise I will be sad. So it is to show the condition without having to directly repeat it. Okay? So the second way that we can reduce is by connecting the condition to the previous sentences. Most specifically with using if so, if not, or otherwise. So now we've talked about two different ways it is that you can reduce a conditional sentence. Let's talk about another way that you can reduce conditional sentences. This is to actually make the conditional sentence a prepositional phrase instead of a conditional sentence. And we will do this by adding the words with or without. So let me show you a couple of examples of this. Okay, so the use of with and without is specific towards possession. Okay, typically you're going to see something like have, and that's going to indicate to you that maybe I could make this a prepositional phrase instead of a full conditional sentence. So for instance here, if I had time, I could say, instead of the whole entire phrase, I could say with time. Okay, so now we're calling this a prepositional phrase because we are starting with the preposition with. Okay, or if I have a negative structure, if I didn't have friends, right, I can make this sentence without friends, comma, I would be sad. Okay? In both of these situations, we are changing the conditional clause to a sort of like a reduced form, but it is a prepositional phrase. Most specifically with this idea of having things. Okay? So the third way that we can make a reduced conditional is by making it making the condition a prepositional phrase. Most specifically using with or without. Okay, so the final way that we can make conditionals reduced is by inverting the subject. So that actually means making it look like a question, moving certain words to before the subject. And there are only 3 situations where we can do this. If in the conditional clause we use had, were, or should. So let me write up examples of each of these and then talk about how we can reduce this. Okay, so let's look at these 3 sentences. If I had known, I would have helped. If I were you, I would go crazy. And if something should happen, please call 911. Okay? What happens in these situations is the first thing that we're going to do is we're actually going to delete if. This is the only example of reducing where if can be deleted. It's very important to know. So I can delete the if, okay? And now I'm going to move the word had, were, or should to the front of the sentence. So it's going to become here. and here, and here. So our new sentences will be, had I known, I would have helped. No change to the independent clause, okay? Or, were I you, I would go crazy, okay? And should something happen, please call 911, okay? So this is only for had, were, or should. We will delete the if and move the had, were, or should to the very first of the sentence. So that is the final way that we can reduce conditionals. So the final way that we can reduce is by inverting the subject and verb, but only when we are using had, were, or should. Okay, so what we're actually going to do now is reduce an example conditional using all 4 options. So hopefully it becomes very clear to you how you can reduce conditionals in these 4 different ways. Okay, let's look at this situation, okay? So this situation says, I think we have enough money, okay? If we had enough money, we would go out. And if we didn't have enough money, we would stay home, okay? So let's use these examples to actually reduce the adverb clause, the condition clause, in all 4 of the different ways that we have talked about. So first of all, if we look here, they have the same subjects, so we can reduce by making an adverb clause an adverb phrase, like the example from number 1. So let's do it. If, delete subject, change main verb to ing, if having enough money. And then the rest stays the same, okay? So we can reduce the regular way. Now, the second way is by connecting to the previous sentence by using if so, if not, and otherwise. So if you look at the previous sentence, it says, I think we have enough money. So already, if we had enough and if we didn't have enough is clear. So we can reduce in the second way by saying, if so, this is for the positive form. If yes, if so, we would go not. If not, we would stay home. Okay? So we could use the positive negative form. If so, we would go out. If not, we would stay home. But also, if we only wanted to use the negative form, we can use otherwise. So instead of saying if not, we can say otherwise. Okay, so these 2 have the same meaning. So we can reduce these adverb clauses, the condition clauses, by regular reduction, okay, by if so, if not, otherwise, okay. Now our third one is by using with or without. And remember, we talked about having or have as a possession is one way that we typically use this. So we could say about money. So with money, we would go out. Okay, or without money, we would stay home. Okay? And then the final way that we can reduce adverb clauses, condition adverb clauses, is by inverting the subject only when it's had, were, or should, right? But if we look here, we are actually using had, okay? So we can reduce by saying had we enough money, we would go out. Again, only if it's were, had, or should. So in this case, had is the reason why that we can reduce, okay? So these are all acceptable reductions of conditionals, and they're all possibilities for you to use. That's all for now. Thanks for watching.